Okay, and we are live doing the string class for Visual Basic. So, the string data type is actually a class. So that means it's not like an integer or a double where it's already built in. It's an actual class, which means that it has these things called methods that we call members. Okay, so when we declare like a string data type, there's certain methods we can use to manipulate stuff. So when a class is used to create a variable, the variable is called an object. Okay, so everything on your form is an object, and now when you make a variable type that's a string, it's also an object, and you can use methods on it. Okay, so objects acts as a member of its class with a dot between the object name and the member name. So these are going to be member names or methods, and then the object name is just whatever you call the string. Okay, so you're probably going to want to print these for your code binders, but we're going to use some of these more than others. So I'm going to highlight the ones that we use really frequently. Chars, and then in brackets, index, which we'll talk about in a second. That's going to return the character that's at the position index in the string object. Okay, so I'm going to just scroll down really quickly here. I'm going to show you what I mean. So let's say that you have a string that says cats. Okay. What Visual Basic does is it splits it up, and starting at position 0 here, it gives every individual character a number, okay? And we call that number the index, and it's going to be really important to understand how the index relates to the string. So always, the index starts on 0. So C is at index 0, A is at index 1, T is at index 2, and S is at index 3. Okay, so if I go say, hey, go to my string that says cats and do chars at position 2, what are we going to return here? Let's see. So it's going to return a T. Okay, so if I just said, hey, here's my, I'm just going to go dim string word, and it's cats. Okay, and then if on the next line I said word dot chars at position 2, this would return a T. Okay, so that's how that one works. Right, so let's say you go what's called out of bounds. So if I say, hey, do this, so word dot chars at position 4, it's going to return an error saying that I'm out of bounds because there is no position 4. Same thing if I were to do like a -1 or something like that. Well, okay, so chars you just say what index you want to go to. Yeah, so you can only fish out like whatever's already in the variable. Does that make sense? So chars goes to whatever index you tell it to go to, and it's going to pull out that one letter. So if I say go to position 0, it's going to say, okay, that's a C. If I say go to position 1, it's going to say that's an A. But if I go to a position that doesn't exist, like do you guys see a position 4? Okay, so there's no position 4, so if I type in a 4, the compiler is going to give me an error. It's going to say I'm out of bounds. Yeah, those are good questions. All right, so that's one we're going to use frequently. Length is another one that we're going to use a lot. Okay, so this returns the number of characters in a string object, and I'm just going to point out it's an integer. Okay, so that's super important, so maybe add that. So if I want to know how long my string is, like how many characters are in it, I could say like word.length. All right, so in the case of cats, how long is it? Yeah, it's 4 characters. Notice how it's 4 characters long, but the indexes run from 0 to 3. Right, that makes sense. If you count it, 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 4, but because we start on 0, our length is always going to be 1 more than the biggest index. Right, so our length is 4, the biggest index is 3. So that's super important. You'll use toUpper and toLower somewhat frequently, especially when we make our hangman game. So all it does is it converts a string either all to uppercase or all to lowercase. Okay, so sometimes that's handy. I got a question. Since we're on this topic, is a lowercase a the same as an uppercase a? And you're right. The answer is no. They're actually not considered the same character. Okay, so it's the same letter. So in our brains, we're like, oh, it's the same letter, but one is lowercase and one is uppercase, so they're considered as two different characters. So that's super important as well. Those are basically the three we're going to use pretty frequently. You guys can read through the other ones. They are useful. Like we do use some pad left and pad right sometimes. If you want to just trim the string and get rid of any extra spaces that might be before or after, you can use trim. All right. So here's a really quick example that's just kind of in my notes here. So we got dim season as string, and we set it to summertime. Notice the capitalization in there. And then we got something we're calling new string. So we're going to do stuff to season, and then we're going to store that response in new string. Okay, so this is just demonstrating with comments. So here's the result as a comment. What would happen if you said, hey, new string becomes season.toUpper? So it would take summertime and make them all uppercase, right? Or if you did toLower, so if you did season.toLower, it's going to take season, which is like this. It's going to make it all lowercase. So new string is going to have the value summertime all lowercase. Let's say that I change season. I say season becomes summertime, but with a bunch of spaces before and after. If I do a trim, it just removes all the spaces. If I did a trim end, it would just get rid of the spaces at the end here. So now you still have the spaces at the front. If you did a trim start, and I got a typo there, it would remove the spaces at the start, but not at the end here. Okay? And then there's some pad lefts. So I didn't go through pad left, but what it does is you say, hey, take season, and on the left side, add a bunch of X's until it's a total of 15 characters. So how many characters is summertime? Is it 10? Like just the word summertime. I think it's 10 characters. Yeah. So it added 5 X's to make the entire string 15 characters long. Okay, so that's what pad left does. If you tell it to pad left and it's less characters than the string already is, so summertime is 10, and I'm saying make it 9, it just doesn't do anything. It's like, well, you already have 9 at least. Okay? All right, so that's pad left. Yes, that's exactly right. Yes, season would stay. Yeah, we're not changing season. So I'm saying new string becomes season.toLower. Season will stay the same. New string is getting the value summertime all lowercase. Yeah. Yeah, to actually change, like if I wanted to change back in my previous example, like my word, I'd have to do an assignment statement that looks like this. I'd have to say, and I'll do lowercase to make it right. I'd have to go word becomes word.toUpper or something like that. That would actually take word, make it uppercase, store it back in the variable word, right? All right, perfect. Now on this page, these other methods, you are going to use these all the time, especially when we make our hangman game. So the demo I'm going to do is going to be specifically for these ones. So we'll take a read through and make sure that they sort of make sense. I recommend that you print this chart and put it in your code binder. All right. So substrings. So if you have a string object and you want to just grab a piece of that object, you would use substring. Okay, so substring needs 2 pieces of information. So in the brackets, you're going to see these things that sort of look like variables. These are called parameters. Okay, so parameters are info in the brackets that the method needs in order to run or do its job. So maybe you should add that. So, and maybe I could word these a bit more friendly. So returns a substring of the string object starting at index start position and continuing for number of characters. Okay, so if I was going to add something to this, I would say returns a piece of a string starting at index start position and grabbing num of chars characters. And we'll see an example of that in our demo. Okay, so I say, hey, start at position 0 and grab 3 characters. So then it would grab index 0, 1, 2. Okay, so the number of characters is how many characters you want to grab starting at start position or start pause. Okay? So if you wanted to, I don't know, just replace what's in the box with that, that would probably be fine. In fact, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to update my notes right now. There. Okay, remove. What does remove do? So it does sort of what the name sounds like it does. It can remove or delete a substring. So you tell it what start position do you want to start on and how many characters you want to get rid of, and it will literally delete that from your string object. So it deletes a substring of the string object starting at index start position and continuing for number of characters. I think that's about as clear as we can be. Replace is sort of interesting. So you tell it the string you're looking for, so the old string, and then the new string that you want to replace old string with. So exchanges every occurrence of a substring in the string object with a new string. So every occurrence of old string will be replaced with new string. So if I was to reword this, I would probably just have the last part, and I'd say every occurrence of old string will be replaced with new string in the string object. Boom. Insert, again, kind of does what it sounds like. It will insert at position, start position, whatever substring you tell it to. Okay, so start position indicates what position substring will be inserted at. Okay? And then index of, this might be the most important one of all. You're going to use this in almost every exercise. It'll be super important when we do our hangman game. So we'll talk about it quite a bit. Returns the position of the first occurrence of substring in the string object. -1 is returned if the substring is not found. Okay, so I can say, hey, I can go to my word. We can go back to cats. So if I say word.indexOf, and then I say an A, it's going to tell me the first A that it can find is going to say, so this would return a 1. So I guess it's important to add that indexOf returns an integer. Okay? That's super important. It returns an integer value. Oh, I tried to make it purple, but it didn't work. There. Yeah, that returns an integer value. And if I try to look for a letter that's not in the word, so if I say, hey, let's try to find an X, this would return -1. So -1 is the signal to you, hey, there are no X's in your word. Okay, so when we're doing hangman and you're guessing letters in a word, you're going to use indexOf all the time. So you're going to take the user guess and you're going to find the index of it in the word. If you get a -1, that means that there are no X's and you're gonna draw the hangman. All right, that's just a preview of later. Okay, I think we're ready to go ahead and